Welcome to IDG Talks. I'm Anastasia Lavrina. Today, our guest is the former U.S. Ambassador to Azerbaijan, Matthew Bryza. Matthew, hello and welcome to our program.
Thank you. A pleasure as always to be with you, Anastasia. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Convoy with 40 tons of flour sent by Azerbaijan Red Crescent Society evades on Agdam-Hankendi road in a row since August 30. Armenia and its puppet regime preventing opening of Agdam-Hankendi road. Will be nice to know your opinion about this situation.
Well, I think the Armenian side has decided to politicize the whole issue of humanitarian aid, and that's a violation of international humanitarian law, which dictates that for humanitarian aid, any and all routes must be used. So it's wrong to block the road from Agdam to Hankendi, or Stepanakert, as they call it. It's also understandable that Azerbaijan wants to regulate the flow of traffic into Karabakh, the areas that are still have Armenian inhabitants, especially Armenian soldiers, as a matter of national security. However, it would also be, it's also necessary under international humanitarian law that humanitarian aid flows smoothly along the Lachin corridor as well. The problem, as we know, is that the Armenian side violated good faith and was shipping things in the humanitarian relief trucks that is not allowed. So I think, it would be much better if both sides could reduce the tensions. But it's clear that Azerbaijan has acted in good faith by offering to deliver the aid from Agdam. Charles Michel has praised that move as well. And so at the end of the day, what's happening is, of course, obviously the Armenian side is trying to use the direction of access for humanitarian aid as a way to put back on the negotiating table the possibility that the legal status of Karabakh could change from something other than a part of Azerbaijan. The Armenian side had that opportunity since the Madrid Principles of November, I guess it was 2007, when the possibility of changing the legal status of Karabakh and of Karabakh was being actively negotiated, and President Aliyev was willing to talk about it. But that's over. Once Azerbaijan won the Second Karabakh War, that opportunity vanishes. It was my last thing I'll say is, the Madrid Principles was a formula of land for peace. And we all recall when Prime Minister Pashinyan, and before that his defense minister a couple of years ago, said the formula of land for peace is dead. The new one is new wars for new territories. So he was rejecting the balanced agreement we were putting together that could have allowed for a change in Karabakh status. If you reject it, you lose a chance to change the legal status.
Matthew, what do you think about media bias towards Azerbaijan since the beginning of this situation on the Lachin road and Armenian provocative statement about so-called blockade and humanitarian crisis in Hankendi city? Some Western media prefer to take more pro-Armenian position, even New York Times. What do you think about this? What is the main reason for that? Is it because of influence of Armenian lobby and diaspora in Western countries, or there is any other reason for such an attitude of some media?
Well, it's largely the fact that the Armenian diaspora has shaped the narrative since the very beginning. I mean, since 1988, when people like me for the first time started to hear about the conflict, because it was just really beginning. And the story back then was a group of Armenians in the Soviet Union who want independence. And so they were the ones who were feeding the information on what sounded like a hopeful story when the rest of us didn't understand the details. So that narrative dominance has continued all these years. And that is the primary reason why the story is misrepresented in major Western media. There's more, though, to it. Western media also often is suspicious of countries where oil and natural gas production are strong. They like to call those petrostates, and they assume that everything must be broken in a country like that. And then finally, I just think the imagery of the aid not coming in through the Lachin corridor it's too simple and too stark to allow these journalists to dig deeper. and do their homework and understand what international humanitarian law says about using all routes possible. Now, the good news is Charles Michel and the United States government, they understand these complexities, and their statements have been balanced, they've been careful, and I think very helpful. And ultimately, that's all that really matters. The media, their ignorance will vanish once there's a peace treaty and the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan is demarcated.
Matthew, what's quite interesting for me, almost each September last years, we see that Armenia is trying to escalate the situation of the conditional border with Azerbaijan. There is several military provocation we observed within the last months. So we saw the same in 2020. We saw the same in the last year. Do you also see these similarities, and how exactly, from your understanding, from your point of view, we can explain the behavior of the Armenian government in a time when Azerbaijan is doing all its best to make the peace deal possible in the near future?
I mean, to me, the tension's been high, for a long time. It's not just the September. I guess you're pointing at the UN General Assembly when a lot of people, when all the leaders are meeting. I don't know that there's that correlation, though. I haven't noticed that September is particularly a bad time. I mean, when the war happened, it had been for an entire year that Armenia had been turning up the pressure in many, many ways. But, the UN General Assembly, on the one hand, it does get people to focus on international events. On the other hand, there's so many other issues on the agenda at the General Assembly that it's hard for Karabakh to fight its way to the surface and be what people are really paying attention to.
The next interesting question: Armenia to exercise with U.S. troops next week on the territory of Armenia. The government of Armenia prefer to have now more pro-Western policy, and we see that the relationship with Russia is getting worse and worse. What is the main reason for that? And do you think that the American government will keep its objectivity in the future?
The United States government is an objective observer. We've been an objective mediator all the way through. Yes, the Armenian diaspora is strong in the United States, but every member of the U.S. government knows that. I mean, in the executive branch, not in the Congress. And that's taken into account and, largely ignored. The U.S. is a fair and honest mediator in the process, unlike France, for example. I understand why Armenians are disappointed with Russia. They figure that Armenia is a member of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, and Russia has not taken Armenia's side. And we know why. Armenian territory was not attacked in September and October and November of 2020. It was Azerbaijan's territory that was attacked. And I think President Putin didn't want to get dragged into another war. Fundamentally, the whole movement that brought Pashinyan to power was pro-Western. And I think people in Armenia realize that if they're ever going to have decent lives, they need to connect with the West. But they've always felt they needed a Russian, quote unquote, protector. And now everything is now in disarray in that regard, because not only was Russia not the protector of Armenia, and not only has, in my experience, as much as we disagreed with our Russian counterparts in Georgia, we worked very well together on Karabakh, and Minister Lavrov and Ambassador Yuri Merzlakov, they always negotiated in good faith with my French counterpart and me. And so Russia has been an honest broker when it comes to Karabakh as well.
And my final question, do you think that there is a possibility for a start of a third Karabakh war? There are some talks in the social media about this issue. What's your opinion? How do you see this situation? And for sure, in your understanding, what should happen in order to two sides, two parts, Armenia and Azerbaijan, to continue its talks about the peace deal, and what is necessary to be done to de-escalate the situation?
I think the risk of war is low, unless Azerbaijan chose to launch one, because Armenia doesn't really have a military that can stand up to Azerbaijan's, as we saw. And Russia is not going to intervene. And I pray Azerbaijan doesn't. And I see no reason why it would launch another round of military operations. Now, we're in the period of intense negotiations. The closer the parties get to a peace agreement, and border demarcation, the more intense the opponents of peace will become. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing radical separatist Armenian nationalists in Karabakh driving domestic Armenian politics, knowing that Pashinyan wants a peace treaty. Of course he wants one. President Aliyev even mentions that. And so the Dashnak Sütun and the opponents of peace are just becoming more active now. But a high level of political tension, in this case, I don't believe is going to lead to a military conflict. Azerbaijan doesn't want another war. Azerbaijan is now a status quo power because it won. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matthew, for joining ID Talks.
Thanks for thinking.